Okay, so Liliam Llanos is a certified NeuroCoach who brings together mindfulness techniques and brain research-based tools to show her clients how to overcome trauma, increase their self-esteem, and create greater balance, growth, and a meaningful life. Liliam is also committed to bringing awareness and integration of science-based strategies to counselors, coaches, and holistic practitioners. She's fluent in both English and Spanish and works with clients worldwide. And I'll let her introduce more if she would like and get started on the presentation.
Well, thank you, Laura, and thanks everyone for being here. It is a pleasure. I taught another class a couple of years ago, and I really like what the Trauma-Informed Network stands for. And in a more personal note, I want to share also, I have a child with disabilities with Down syndrome, and so I'm also passionate about advocating for families that have children or loved ones with disabilities. It is a very tough, but also joyful journey, I should say. And then again, thank you for being here. This subject is really important to me. I struggled for many years with trauma and depression, anxiety, and I like now the fact that I can help other people, but I can only help so many people on my role as a coach. And so that's the reason why I want to share now with other practitioners and especially therapists and counselors. You do a great job. Therapy was an essential part in my recovery process. The information that I'm going to be sharing is really new, it's not yet part of any coaching or therapeutic training that I know of. So that's why that I want to share this message so it can be widely known. So you're going to learn about this neuroscience that basically says that overcoming psychological issues shouldn't be as hard, and it's just a matter of knowing how to balance brain network so we can improve psychological health. This is going to be what we called brain-based experiential learning. So I don't want you to get bored with all neuroscience, but then also experience a little bit of those strategies that you can use in your practice so you can help your clients achieve that balance. So I want to introduce you. These are special researchers that have done different research and brain scans on meditators, on Franciscan nuns, and also among monks while they're speaking on tongues. And so they have extensive mindfulness and the neuroscience. So they have that experience with spirituality and also neuroscience. And in fact, they were the first neuroscientists that made that connection that, when we are in a state of relaxed mindful awareness, then we can quiet the default mode network that is where all our worries and concerns and thoughts are made, and is the part of the brain that experience a lot of activity when we are under those states. So let's start with the hands-on. So I hope that you're ready to relax, and it's going to help me too, because it's always a little bit of nervousness when you're going to speak to other people. So I'm going to ring a bell, and when I do that, so I want you just to focus on your state on your current mood. Sorry, let me. And try to leave everything behind, the stress of the day. This is a skill you can teach, and you probably are already doing, like teaching your clients also to become relaxed. And if you attended my last class, you probably remember that yawning is one of the fastest strategies to turn off excess activity. So let's try one more time. Listen to the bell. And this time, add a mindful yawn. So that means you're gonna pay attention to how your mouth moves, the different sensations in your body. Yawning is a thermoregulatory mechanism. It really slows down the excessive activity in the default mode network, and I'm gonna talk about it, what the default mode network is. So let's try one more time, last time on this round. Try one more yawn, even if you have to fake it first. Notice the different sensations that are going on in your body and mind. Notice if your state and mood has changed. Next time when you do this, you can also stretch. Yawning and stretching, you know, we do that very spontaneously, and it's an instinctual process that everyone is born with, including babies in the womb. So most people, you can open your eyes now. Most people by the third yawn say they feel calm. And calmness is that sense where you reduced the excessive neuroactivity. So when you're in this state, you're not thinking too much. Your mind isn't wandering too much. Did anyone experience that? If you wanna just unmute yourself or type in the chat. Did you notice a change in your mood or just your body? You feel more relaxed, more present? Brit says, yes, thank you, very relaxed. I love that. So the goal now is to see if you can remain in this state with your eyes open. And we're gonna continue working through it. I don't want you to be stuck on my words. So, but I want you to let my words go through you. And this is also a key part of the process that you can teach to your clients. And when we are in this state, it's a lot easier to identify the problems that we need to work on and also resolve them, sometimes within a few minutes. So you can see remarkable results within a single session. And that's what a lot of my clients experience. So then I'm gonna ring the bell again one more time. So while I show the slides, I don't want you to focus on the words. You know, I want you to trust your imagination and your intuition so you can wander over the page. Because when you do that, is you're turning on the Salience Network. And the Salience Network will be like working behind the scenes. So if you relax and are mindfully aware, then your brain is going to look for anything that, whether it's in the environment, on the images, or my words that are uniquely and personally important to you. So I want to discourage you. You are here to take notes. Maybe you can watch the recording again so you can catch anything else that you think that you wanted to remember and learn more of. So your Salience network is only your awareness network and also your value network. So that's how it identifies, what's really important to you. So it's not going to be about what I think that you should remember or what you ahead of time thought that you needed to learn. So just allow it right now. You are in a different state, and that very relaxed state, as Britt says, and the clear mind that Alicia said as well. Okay, so what you see here is a picture of several of the different networks. Well, like we don't really know. Like it could be, different networks together. Like it's gray. Usually, when you see this type of imaging, it has different colors that identify the network. So it could be one part your Salience network or the default mode network, or it can just be like the activity in the thalamus. So that's why like it's important to forget for a while, unless like you are a neurosurgeon, then you need to be aware of the parts of the brain. But if not, it's ideal that we focus on networks, because we know what you see here are like axons and they extend from neurons, and they have like thousands of synaptic tips, that is where neurochemicals are exchanged. So the idea is to learn like how these networks function, within themselves and also in conjunction with other networks. So this is another picture, and these are examples of networks and nodes and functional connectivity. Like again, you can see here like have different colors, so then they are different networks, and also depending on when these images were taken, like what the person was focusing on. So that's gonna change. The default mode network is that yellow part that you see in the image on the center. And so when it's overactive, then it becomes, you can see that it's more dense. So you no longer can see like those axons and the neurons, but it just like becomes like more of a solid image. And there are hundreds of brain networks that have been identified, but for our goal, that is to promote and maintain a state of optimal psychological state, we only need to worry about 3 important networks. And it's been called the triple network model. So they are the imagination or default mode network, the thinking, or also called the central executive network. There are other, this one, like you may find different, like I can't remember, but there's executive central network. So you're gonna find that one a little bit, like it's tweaked depending on the study that you read. But by the definition and the definition, not, but by the processes that are controlled under this network, then you're gonna identify it. And this imagination, thinking, and awareness network are terms that have been assigned by my mentor, which is Mark Robert Waldman. And so you might not find that unless you're just reading his literature. So you might want to just focus on default mode network, central executive network, and Salience network. That's how you're more likely going to find it. Okay, so before we go into talking about the default mode network, let's do a little bit of yawning again. So in case your mind has started to have too much going on and worrying about capturing all of this, just focus again on relaxing, on being fully present again, what's going on in your body. And when you feel again that sense of calmness, you may want to ask your intuition, up until this point, is there anything that really caught your attention and your intuition thinks that it's worth to remember? And you might want to just write that down and try to use just simple words or a sentence. Okay. Okay, so then we see here that the executive network, and that's a very tiny network. Like if you place your fingers just right above your eyes and turn in a little bit in, like that's gonna be like it's just like in this area. And then again, remember, like it's not solid and it's just there, but you're gonna see, if we were seeing it through brain scan image, then we would see just those connections being active there. So then in that area, we do all the thinking and planning and talking. Like it's, what we use just to also see like how we're going to answer and where we're gonna write when we are only on this network. But if we use the default mode network, and then that is like more, it's like a larger part. If you see on the right hand side, this is also an illustration that Mark Waldman created. So it's like that's like is interpreted, and it's like a simpler image, because sometimes it can get really confusing when we're seeing the brain scan images. So the imagination network like is, it's bigger, and then also, like it's like predicting always like what's gonna happen, and it also, can think about worst case scenario and like different things, but then also where creativity it exists. So that's like the part that make us more creative. But besides the central executive network and the default mode network, we also have to pay attention to the emotional network. And that is what is also called salience. And this is gonna be like our favorite network, because it's the one that brings balance to the other two. So all the experiences that go within the default mode network, it's like we analyze there like all the experiences that we have, and it's where our feelings also in the salience network is like where we create feelings that are associated to different experiences. So these aren't really happening in the present moment. So for the most part, it's like we pull or also old memories, and we mix those with, we can call it like fantasies of what may or may not happen in the future. So whenever you're feeling anxiety or depression, you are imagining that something is not going to work out in the future. So it's not all based in reality. So we can learn like how to identify that, and then also just to be aware that when we are worrying, you know, a big part of that like is, you know, just part of our imagination. So what we have to do when we find ourselves in that space, and it's good that we develop self-awareness so we don't get caught up, you know, we don't let those thoughts like keep us stuck, and that they don't grow, but instead, you know, that we can cut those timely, so sooner than later, so we can then at that point is when we're gonna focus again. You don't always have to have a bell to ring, but you can have also, you know, just any type of cue. But if you're interested on the bell, you can go to awakeningbell.com or .org. I think it's .org. I have it on one of the slides, and you can set it to ring, you know, every 15 minutes, I think every 30 minutes. And it's recommended that you do it. The more often you do it, is the easier it becomes to stay in that, you know, on that state of balance, like to keep the networks in that state of balance. So let's play and focus on the sound of the bell again. So when you realize most problems are created in this imagination center, half of your problems disappear. And then if you focus on doing a mindful yawn or super slow stretch, I like how Laura was like just making a circle with her head. That really helps you get to that state. And if you mindfully yawn, you'll come back into the present moment. And just forget about everything I've said and just become aware right now in your body. So you make your Salience Network become active. And now you can ask your intuition again. If is there anything that is worth making a note about? Okay, so then we have another image here where you can see a short description also about every network. The default mode network activates when not performing a task. And what we used to believe before is like when we weren't doing anything or when we were asleep, like there was no activity in the brain. But now we know that, you know, that's not the truth. The default mode network, like there's activity that's even, you know, when you're daydreaming, mind wandering and thinking about others. And so when you think there's nothing really in your mind, there's a lot going on in your brain. The Salience Network, it's the one that allows you or helps you to switch between the default mode network and the central executive network. So it's related to sensory and limbic inputs. And the central executive network engages your conscious brain to think and maintain attention on a prioritized task. And, you know, the studies that were used to learn like this properties of the different networks, like our recent studies. So they are between like 2017 and 2021. Like you can find some studies where you can read more about this, and then I can also share the slides with you. Like I have some notes at the bottom where you can, you know, find specific studies. And a big mistake that we have made is that for the most part, we emphasize our conscious thinking ability, and, you know, the cognitive, different forms of cognitive therapy is about changing the way that we think. And we believe that by changing how we think, then we're gonna change how we behave. And if we do this, you know, that psychological problems are gonna go away. Also, you know, it happens like it's taught to us since we are like in first grade to discourage us from letting our mind wandering. And you know, there's we are seeing like there are many, and most of the self-awareness skills that we can gain come from allowing ourselves to be in that state as well of mind wandering. So then let's have you sit back again, relax, and becoming aware, allowing that Salience network to take over. So sitting back and just watching your thoughts, feelings, and your moods, and just allowing yourself to go in and out of consciousness. Will help you create that balance between the executive network, or how you think, and the default mode network that is essential for predicting or deciding what you're going to be doing next. So if we encourage ourselves and our clients to continue deepening into that imagination creative part of the brain and going to the Salience network, we can create and maintain that balance more easily. You can take time to write or ask your intuition first. What is the most valuable insight or thought that you heard in this part? And you might feel like, oh, this relaxation is too much. We're not used to it. Like we're just used, we have to be focused and we have to talk and pay attention to every single word that we hear. But the truth of the matter is that, you know, we only catch, and it's easier for us to grasp like 7 chunks of information at a time. Or really, like we can have like sharp focus only for about 20 seconds. And after that, our brain just gets tired and loses a lot of chemicals that are necessary to stay highly focused. So Then the opposite that we've been taught is truth, that mind wandering is actually one important tool for us so we can be more focused. And these are strategies that are taught at the Loyola Marymount University within the executive MBA program. So, these are CEOs of multinational companies that are really about productivity. So they just don't want to spend a lot of time, meditating or doing yoga. So they just love these strategies because they know they just take a few seconds, maybe a minute at the most, and then they can go on with their work. And so they've done also study among some of these students, and the report and have been really strong, and they don't really care about the neuroscience behind it. What they just care is if it's going to work for them or not. And at least an 80% of the students were really satisfied with the results and were implementing these strategies in their day-to-day life. So we're going to the next slide. And then again, this is the educational models have made a big mistake, and is that we overemphasize executive networks. We talked about that. We discourage the default network activity. And if you see those yellow blocks again, is, the default mode network being very active, and the central executive network. So if you see on the front part is slow, and then only the rest of the brain is inactive when you are thinking what the words that I'm saying mean and what you need to do next. I went backwards. So then we are just teaching for the most part to ignore that Salience network, the mind wandering that I talked about. Okay, so then these are different brain scan images of how excessive activity in the default mode network or the executive network disrupts the Salience network and brain functioning. So this one might be hard for you to read, but this is frontotemporal activity in dementia. So then the Salience network is disrupted, and the Salience network would be like this. Can you see my cursor there? So it's those red points. Then the B is for schizophrenia. So then the yellow part is the gray matter signal decreasing in the first episode of schizophrenia. And the orange one is gray matter signal decreasing in first episode of chronic schizophrenia. And then again, I will share with you these slides. But so the dysfunctional Salience network has been linked to most psychological, social, emotional, cognitive, and age-related problems. And you're gonna see on the list as well, is related to anxiety or associated to ADHD. So for the most part, the ADHD issues are, the people that are more into that imagination network, longer. So we just need to teach them also how to balance the networks better. Depression, mood disorders, attention problems, antisocial behavior, drug addiction, excessive pain, dementia, and autism. And these are just images of how the Salience network look like, and like there are not very many of those. So so if you like point like this area of the side of your head, so it's like where the insula that is kind of tucked in right behind your temporal and the anterior cingulate. And those two work together to create that balance between both networks that put you in this state. When you are in this state, also your intuition works faster, and it works like so fast that you can't really, think about how to solve the problems, but the answers are there. So, but it's hard sometimes to catch up with it. So also like, go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, just a quick question. Because I just wanted to clarify. So the default mode network is the state of mind when we're daydreaming and kind of letting our mind wander. And are you saying that network we're discouraged from being in that state of mind, as well as the Salience network? Like we're also discouraged from using the Salience network? Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, but I guess I'm a little confused, because it seems like we wouldn't be able to maybe help when we're using the Salience network, because it's that transition, right? It's the transition from the default mode network to executive
network.
Yeah.
So it also depends on, the task, like what's the activity, where you're at. If you are like overthinking, everything, then if you go to that state of relaxed, mindful awareness, then you are going to like counterbalance that and quiet the default mode network. So when you go ahead.
So the default mode network it sounds like you're saying it can be that over worrying. It can be maybe like patterns that we set into unconsciously, or
yeah, and then the it's imagination network. There's creativity, but then also it can be anticipating, like worst case scenarios as well.
Okay, so then some stress and anxiety can come from overusing that network.
Yes.
And so it's the Salience network is helpful to get us out of that mode and basically be more flexible, right?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes, so it's being able, I like that word flexible, so you can just like go back and forth instead of being stuck and rigid about, just being focused, for example, as I mentioned before, it's like just if you're just overly thinking about remembering everything that I'm saying, so then you're just there on the central executive network, and your intuition, then you still at some point, it's like you run that through your Salience network. So the Salience network is what's going to decide truly what's important and what's gonna, like stick for to say, something. Unless like you're not using, at all, and then you are I'm thinking right now, like for example, with ADHD, like some of the medication, like it can put a person too much on the central executive network. Yeah. So,
okay.
But I haven't been on medication for ADHD, so. But I read, like I'm in a group of nootropics. And then there are a lot of people like wanting to switch from medication to nootropics. Are you familiar with nootropics? So it's like more natural substances that, that can also stimulate the production of dopamine and serotonin. And so in that way, it's like it doesn't have as much side effects, but there are still, there's a lot on that too. And like there are people that, they have like also adverse side effects from that.
Got it. Okay. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a good thing to strengthen the salience network so that we can kind of switch from these different modes, like brain modes, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's basically, there are other strategies, but this is probably like the fastest. And then you don't need really, like anything, but like you don't even need the bell. The bell, it works also as a brain entrainment. At some point, as your brain is so conditioned to the sound and then to the state where you get when you hear the sound. So then it's going to take you there faster. You know how sometimes there's like special tune or, maybe like a nursery rhyme, like it really, takes you to a special relaxing state. So then that's like how the mindful bell works.
Got it. Thank you.
I have a message from Marcy. Hi, Marcy. I'm glad you made it. Okay, so where are we at? Okay, so then, yeah, these are one of the few images that we have. So then it's important that we learn how to trust being in that state of mindful awareness. And we also know, and I'm sure you as therapists as well, that when people are in survival mode, is it's hard to just allow ourselves to relax. It's like we want to be on guard, like some of us, that's how we respond to trauma. So we feel like I'm working now with a client, and then she just says like, I have to be ready to fight for my family. So then it's been really hard for her, and this is she's been working for a while on this specific issue, and she was very hesitant when I was talking about this approach, but she finally allowed herself like to try it, and she's looking forward to doing other sessions. So yeah, it's really good for people that are struggling in survival mode. Okay, so these are things I'm gonna share that are involved with the Salience Network as well, and it's gonna like help you also like see the importance. And one of the reasons that we haven't heard a lot about the Salience Network is because this wasn't even labeled until about 2006, and it wasn't seen in academic settings until 2011. So while the other networks have been studied at least for 20 years, this is fairly new. So then here are some of the states and like how you can tell when your client isn't that the Salience Network is active. So on this state, we can detect and evaluate the importance of emotional experiences. It regulates the intensity or emotional reaction as well. So sorry, I'm losing my bell here. Hold on, give me just a sec. I think we need a mindful break. So let's try that. Now we talk about those three networks. So let's see what your intuition thinks is valuable for you to keep from this last part. If you are more on that central executive network, then, switch, like yawn and stretch. The slower you do it, the better. And even if you don't feel like yawning, remember you are thermoregulating your brain. You feel like you can't yawn, you can just sigh. Like releasing that tension. Ask your intuition again what you need to write down. And just take note of that. Only a few words. Ring the bell one more time so you can finish writing. And just trust that you're grasping everything you need at this time. Okay, so let's continue now. So then the Salience Network assesses value of emotional experiences, regulates the intensity of emotional reactions. It regulates many processes. It's also the center of intuitive processing, something that you really need to solve problems and be more creative when solving problems. It optimizes the switching between the two networks. So one of the studies conducted shows that even for a student in 6th grade who have what it's called trait mindfulness, the ability to sit back and be aware of what's going on rather than just reacting to it, these students have very good shifting back and forth between those networks. So then it creates that optimal balance between thinking and feeling processes, regulates intuitive processing and problem solving. It integrates top-down and bottom-up processes. So all the parts before you become conscious of it are those bottom-up processes. And then, for example, if you put your finger on a hot stove, you're going to have an emotional response in the Salience network. But then this information is sent like upwards to the executive network and the default network. So remember that the default network is always working on predicting all the possible future outcomes that you might orchestrate. And then it's also in the executive network, which you're going to have like all those options where you're going to choose from. Okay, here you also assess social cues and regulate social behavior, develop self-awareness and consciousness introspection, strengthens the ability to feel empathy and compassion. And so it develops self-awareness. So without the Salience network, it's harder to have self-awareness and the ability to consciously introspect. So that's why different forms of contemplative meditation have all the same neurological and physiological benefits and psychological benefits as well. So mindfulness isn't really like more valuable than transcendental meditation, for example. So they have the same benefits, but it allows you to be relaxed and more in the present moment and aware. So that's how these practices help us have optimal psychological health. Okay, so when we don't include the Salience Network and we don't exercise, I should say, when we don't, stimulate the Salience Network, then we are easily burned out because we are, again, like just focusing all our energy and attention usually in the central executive network, especially if we're obsessed with achieving a goal. So then going back and forth between that state, or the activity in the central executive network and the default mode network, that also is like that part where you have those solutions, the possible solutions that you're going to use to achieve the goals that you've come up with from the central executive network. So this is a study that I just wanted to show. It just says that shy people have less volume of gray and white matter in Salience Network, weaker ability to regulate emotion in social situations. So this, I think it's really good, so we can be more motivated, and I think also like to help our children to have to gain these skills early in life so they can become more self-aware. And then also when the gray matter and white matter like is thicker, then they're gonna function at a higher level, and they're gonna be able to have better like emotional regulation as well. So then again, relaxed mindful awareness, like is, that state where I hope that you experience at least for a glimpse right now. It doesn't really have to take, I think there's what we've heard until now is that, the longer that you meditate, the better. And a lot of people get discouraged because they either feel that they don't have time, or they think they have to keep their mind, blank and quiet all thoughts. And we already know that the more we focus on that, the harder it becomes. Mindfulness, and when you are in this relaxed, mindful awareness state, you are just more accepting of what is. You are not worrying about the future or mourning on the past, but you are just present and what is, on possibilities that are here and now. We stimulate that empathy and the intuitive problem solving, and we can experience emotional balance. There is one thing though, like sometimes it happens that when we do practice getting into this state, and we close our eyes, and if we are working on our own, and depending on like the background and the experience of the person or the client, that can also be traumatic for the client. So the best way to practice this, and especially since we are coaching with clients, we are doing therapeutic treatments, is like doing with a mindful dialogue. So we're gonna just allow the person, like we're gonna take turns and allow to have a dialogue where we're gonna try to limit, like the turn, so we can speak in 4 or 7 chunks of information or words, and then we're gonna take ourselves to that state of mindful awareness, and then from that space to focus on what we just heard. And this is more effective than just trying to do it ourselves. But what has happened so far is that, as I mentioned before, people get really good results and progress within 1 or 3 sessions. Sometimes a couple of issues can be resolved within 1 session, but then they can also take this tool and work on that, on becoming more self-aware, on trusting their intuition, on quieting more like that, the inner voice that is anticipating and imagining worst case scenarios. And it allows the person to be more independent and not just like have the therapist or the coach as a crutch. We can't just be with our clients every single moment. So it is good to have this option as well. And this is another image, some images where you can see the Salience Network. Sorry, let me go back. Like activity in the default mode network and Salience Network and the central executive network. And that altered connectivity within and between the default mode network and central executive and Salience network in obsessive compulsive disorder. So if we can rapidly shift between those networks, then it's easier to reach that optimal psychological health. So then again, this was like a brain-based experiential learning. So I wanna ring the bell again before I answer any questions that you may have. And we're gonna ask this question: what did you find intuitively salient or important? So then let's do 3 mindful yawns this time. And you may also add super slow stretch. The slowest, the better. Just do what comes more natural to you. You can also gently rock your body. You may just softly touch your hands, or some people really love like rubbing their scalp as well. And savor the pleasurable experience. Your brain is designed to seek pleasure. And this changes the way we see and trust our intuition. One more yawn to go deeper and connect with the real you, not just your thinking you. And ask that deeper you, your intuition, to clearly show you anything that is meaningful, that you find valuable. Can be for this moment, or it could be something also that will be useful later on, maybe tomorrow. When you're ready, open your eyes and take notes. Maybe ask what is the most important insight you received throughout the night, throughout this class. Trust your intuition and write that down. Can be some keywords. Ask one more time. Is there anything worth remembering? Maybe a reminder for you that you can have visible in your office or at home. It's possible that at this time your mind starts, to jabber. Just bring your attention to that page, into your awareness. And if you want to type in the chat and share, if anyone wants to share their insights or one insight, anything that your intuition told you is valuable. Or you can unmute yourself as well.
My experience was this is Alicia, at the beginning of this presentation, I was finding myself really tired after doing sessions all day today. And then engaging the Salience Network, I feel more mentally clear and more alert. Now, at the end of this presentation, even though I may still physically feel tired, mentally I'm alert and clear, and so I need to buy one of those the bowls so I can do this and teach my clients. So thank you so much.
You're welcome, but you don't even have to buy that. I used to have one, but I'm gonna type the link in the awakeningbell.org and make sure that's the right one. Yeah, and you can set it. You don't have to download it. There are some apps also that you can download to your phone. But I just love this one because I can have it on my desktop and that's more practical. My son keeps just hiding my Tibetan bowl, so this is better. He can't take it away. Thank you so much, Alicia. I love that. Imagine the value if you can do this, in between sessions. So it's like a cleanse and, starting over, like resetting your brain.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Laura, what came to mind for me is wanting to learn more about when to use the bell in sessions with clients.
Does that make sense? Like at what point in the therapy session would you kind of do this mindful, like this little 30-second mindfulness pause?
The way that I use it is like when people start like rambling and like you can see that they just like go back and forth, and you know, that is, yeah, like they're not as present, then I do it. And like I can tell now, you know, like when they're just working from the central executive network. And I also call it like the day-to-day consciousness, than when they're going within, because the thing is, when we work with from the day-to-day consciousness or the central executive network, I don't know if I'm sure it happens to you where, you know, you talk to the person and maybe they're going through divorce, and then they're coming thinking that they need to work on that. But once you go deeper, you realize that, you know, it's like a pattern, and it might be, you know, to go back the root cause to childhood experience or teenage years. So if you just work, or if we just work from that insight from the central executive network instead of from the intuition, then it's like the process is longer. It's not necessarily that is wrong, but it takes you longer until you actually find the root of the problem.
Got it. So yeah, when we're kind of stuck in like logic brain, and sounds like maybe like indecision, because that also sounds like the logical part of the I forget what network that is. And also maybe when ruminating, if clients are like ruminating on something.
Also the anxiety with worst case scenario, like, you know, I'm concerned, or, you know, I'm afraid this is gonna happen. So those are like cues. I guess if you go to, like to the description of the default mode network and the central executive network, like, okay, if they're stuck here, then it's a good time. But you can, if you want to just like make it a part of your practice, you can, you know, like, I think eventually you will more easily identify those times, like, okay, maybe we need, and even yourself, like, you know, sometimes it's like we lose track too, like we find that, you know, we are not fully present. So then you can do it not only because of your client, but also because you want to be of more value and be more present and have more empathy and compassion. So it should be for both the client and the therapist.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, Bree said, or who was gonna talk?
I was just going to make a comment. Thank you, Lilian, for this presentation. I'm at Healing Pathways. I'm Quick Lilian, and I work with Kristen at Healing Pathways. So welcome on board, Laura, almost.
Thank you.
For August. So I've been starting my sessions lately with just like a minute of silence with my clients, just to make conscious that transition from where they'd been to now we're in this setting right here, and just having them do some relaxing kinds of breathing. But I like the idea of actually implementing a yawn and a stretch with that. So I might add that as well, right towards the end of our minute of silence. But I wanted to say also, I've been taking a kind of an energy medicine class on the vagus nerve, and that throat breath activates the vagus nerve that brings balance. And the yawn, I kind of realize that the yawn really is that kind of throat breathing. You know, you kind of when we release it. So I think maybe part of what's happening is that the vagus nerve is getting activated, and also bringing some balance into the person as well.
Yeah, I like that. That's one of the things I like the most about this, is that you can integrate it with any other therapy, you know, with just counseling, or if you are into energy work.
Mhm.
Like, in fact, like, it was weird how all this came together, like the process that I use in my coaching, because I first started just like with energy healing, and then I did a lot of things, like most of the process that I use now, but I didn't know why it worked, but
Yeah,
it did.
yeah, right.
So then I would just do it, and then it was like I was guided, you know, to get more into the science, and like
Yeah,
it wasn't enough just like, you know, it works. But then also there's a lot of, you know, like controversy of like what's valuable. Is it therapy or is it energy work? And it's just, I don't have all the pieces together, but like every time, the more I study neuroscience, is that I see neuroscience like providing the supporting evidence, like why,
yeah,
what
exactly.
we call spirituality
Right.
or energy work, like
Yeah.
why it works.
You know, even like the chanting of the monastics,
Mhm.
you know, I mean, that chanting is activating and bringing balance. It's the actual chanting that's doing that, but we don't realize that it's having that kind of neurological effect. Yeah, another example, I know this is kind of a little strange, but um, I have a lot of Muslim friends, and so when I go to my own service on Sunday, we say the Lord's Prayer, and I implement the hand positions that they use when they pray. So right at the end of the Lord's Prayer, I just kind of do this, because that's kind of how they end their prayer, and I just want to do something to be in solidarity with them. But then we were shown in that vagus nerve class I was taking, that one of the positions that activates the vagus nerve is to do this. So it's kind of like they're doing that naturally. They don't realize it, but it's actually a movement to activate the vagus nerve and bring some balance. So I thought, you know, it is really interesting when you understand the science behind some of what we do. Naturally, we do it naturally, and but there's actual science behind it.
Well, a curious fact before I read Britt's comment is that both Robert Waldman and Andrew Newberg, call themselves atheists, but one of their bestseller book is How God Changes Your Brain. So that's, you know, part of that research that they did. It was on different on people with different spiritual practices, and then they did the brain scan while they were doing like prayer, meditation, or speaking in tongues. They even conducted a research that was requested by the National Geography, National Geography or Geography.
Geographic, yeah.
Yes. And so I think this is really interesting, like how, you know, they went that route, even though it's like for them, God doesn't exist, but they see how that belief, only the belief, you know, alters the brain. So when they are praying.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Claire. Okay, so then Britt says, I have a brain injury. Processing information is very challenging for me and very neurofatiguing, especially presentations. I was so relaxed through your presentation. I'm getting emotional. And leading us through the process. I absorbed a lot more information with a brain injury. I am also in the default mode network most of the time. Learning about these networks makes me feel better about how much time I've been in that state. And she also said, love this, Claire. And yes, I mean, I had to confess that doing this was like what made me more nervous. I was thinking they might think that, as I said, like, you know, it's like it might be too much of relaxing and yawning and the mindful bell. So yeah, I really appreciate your input. Okay, let's see. And then Mona, so good to hear you again. Thank you. This is great. I'm glad that you made it, Mona. Thank you. Alicia says, holistic is the key. I worked with Native American women in an addiction trauma treatment program that were victims of sex trafficking or being kidnapped and severe domestic violence experiences. And the most healing progress for them was seen by including their spiritual practices or supporting them with reconnecting to their spirituality. Yeah, I love that. And Brit said, again, thank you, Lilian. So helpful. Your response brought tears for me too. Don't make me cry. And thank you for being here. Anyone else, if you want to just unmute yourself before we end the class.
I'm just curious about that book, How God Changes Your Brain, because I practice kirtan, which is like part of bhakti yoga, where it's kind of like chanting, but you're singing mantras. And it sounds kind of similar, maybe Claire Julian, to maybe the vagus nerve. And it's so interesting how like good I feel after I sing. Like it's like 2 hours of singing, and it's like truly amazing. And yeah, so I'm just curious if that book speaks to kind of multiple like kind of spiritual practices and like why it feels so good.
Yeah, it's a good one. You should get that.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, and I love, like, when I was more into the energy work, like I felt just impressed sometimes, like after, healing session, like just to express through my voice, I should say. Like, I don't know how that's, like, it wasn't really chanting, but it was, I don't know. It's weird how it just flows. Like, you don't really, and I guess it's, from that Salience Network, it's like, because you're not really expecting or planning, doing a lot of motor planning, but it's just letting it flow through you.
The same thing happens in a sweat lodge. At this program, I was the clinical director out there, and we did sweat lodge at least twice, sometimes 4 times a month with the Native women. And there's a lot of research the Indian Health Services have done regarding drumming and singing, because drumming can even be, that bilateral stimulation, and engages the vagus nerve with the singing and the movement of the energy through the body. Like, I saw more healing and joy being in lodges with those women. And I've been practicing Native ways for 17 years, and the almost 2 years I got to work with them, it was the highlight of my career so far. So yeah, drumming, there's a lot of research on drumming that really helps with like engaging the vagus nerve and moving energy along with the songs.
Alicia, I would be really curious to know more about that, like the science behind it. I don't know if you have any resources.
Yeah, I can email them to you.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I don't know what your personal email is, but
yeah, I'll if you email me in the TICN email, I'll respond with my other email.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering if the drumming and the bell, even though they have different frequencies, but they're still stimulating something because of a frequency that they create. So it's kind of interesting to hear that too.
Yeah, and there's different types of like hides on the drums that'll give you different tones.
Yeah.
Right, with the different frequencies that work with chakras and all of that, and it's really about the individual finding the tone and the frequency that matches their need.
Yeah, wow. What a great experience though, to be at the sweat lodges. Do you still participate in those, Alicia?
I do.
Wow,
Mhm.
that's great.
I've
that's
heard
awesome.
good things about it, and I've been invited in the past, but it just hasn't happened. But yeah, I'm more curious now about
Yes,
experiencing
absolutely.
that. I typed my email in the chat if you want to connect, and also like I'm really wanting to take, you know, this knowledge to more practitioners and therapists. So if you know of another organization, in fact, we have another date set in July, and I don't know, it could be like narrowing it down. I haven't decided yet what I'm gonna do, because I focus more on the Salience Network, but then maybe it can be like with focus on the Default Mode Network once and maybe another one.
Yeah, you could, so the health clinic is called Natsu Health. It's owned by it's under IHS, works with, or it's owned by the Skull Valley Band of Goshoots out in Tooele, Utah.
Wow.
And they have a male only long-term addiction trauma residential, and they have a women's only. And they're actually expanding, but it's through IHS, Indian Health Services federally. And so I think they would absolutely, and it's NATSU. Like I said, I'm due to my own life and caring for elders and my own health, I'm just doing my own small private practice right now, but it's an amazing organization.
And yeah, I didn't get those names. But I'm trying to think. I don't know, may I have your email?
Sure.
So I can, yeah, so then I'll
Yep.
ask. Okay.
My private practice is Standing Tall Holistic Healing at Gmail.
Okay, wonderful.
It's kind of long, but it's a vision for women victims of trauma, healing, and standing tall.
I love it. Okay, thank you so much, Alicia. So anything,
Welcome, thank you.
Anything else? Kristen, I'm in transit, but really enjoyed this. Your slides are really amazing. Thank you, Kristen. I met Kristen at an ACES presentation they were doing with United Way in Ogden. And yeah, it's been amazing. I think she's been also, she participated once in a mental health panel with the Utah Parent Center, where I help with the advocacy for families with children with disabilities. So yeah, I really love TICN. Thanks again, Laura. Anything
Thank you
else?
so much. I'll send the recording out, and if the slides, if that's okay with you, Lilian.
Yeah, I can send the slides to you.
Okay, either whatever you're comfortable with. And then the CEs, if you all email me. And then I don't know if we have a date set yet for July, Lilian. I don't know.
I thought we did, but I kind of don't remember. But
Yeah,
we can
we'll
set that up.
Yeah,
if
we'll
we
set that
haven't.
up and just look out for an email about the July presentation. So
And let anyone else you are close to or you know that wasn't here today, so they know that it's worth it. Thanks again.
thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.